Hello and welcome back to Strathpeffer Junction. We've got another tutorial video today. This time we're going to be having a look at this Hornby Class 50. Now this is a loco that I got from a well-known auction site not all that long ago, but it was listed as having a little bit of damage and there was various parts that weren't working properly, including the lights and some running issues and various other things. But I thought, you know what, I'll take a punt. I'm not too bad at getting down and dirty with some of the problems with some of these locos, so I thought I'll take a punt, I'll risk it, see what I get for a good price, and if I can fix it then brilliant, and if not, well, I haven't lost too much and I've got some spares for other things. But anyway, the loco when it arrived was like this, or rather it wasn't in two parts, but it was in need of fixing. There was a lack of detail, as there is still on above the buffered beams and the air hoses and all the rest, and none at all on this side. There was one or two little faint, I don't know if it was glue or some kind of residue, but I managed to clean that off carefully with some watered down isopropyl. In terms of the chassis itself, one of the tanks had broken off, and I had to fix that. It was this one here. It's caked in bits of glue, so I've cleaned it up fairly well, and with a wee bit of weathering we'll not be able to notice anything there. There was a few other parts round about it, which I can't even remember where they are now, but I've fixed them back on and they're working not too bad. I mean, it wasn't new by any means. It was a good few years old now, but no, not too bad condition and fundamentally okay. But the main problems that I had with it was poor running, and back to the fan again. Now, those of you who watched the Class 31 video that I did, we removed the fan assembly, and I suspect that's going to be the issue here again. But the other problem was the directional lights. In one direction, the head code and the forward lights worked fine, and the rear light worked okay. But in the other direction, which was this one, the rear lights didn't work at all. Now, I used my multimeter to check out all the different parts of the circuitry that would relate to the lighting board here. I tried resistances. I've got a diode checker on this particular multimeter so I could check if the diodes were working or not, and just applying some low voltage too, and sure enough it was actually the LED that had gone, the rear red LED. So now what I could have done was to replace the actual LED on the lighting board here. It would be fairly simple with this one, because it's a standard, I think, LED size. It looks like it's probably a 3mm LED, and if you cut that down a bit, you probably get it in. But when I looked at Peter's Spares website and also the Hornby website, you can still get these replacement lighting boards, and they're not very much. I think it was about £6 posted or something like that. So maybe a wee bit more, but that sort of ballpark. So I thought, you know what, I'll go for a lighting board replacement, so it's all as it should be. There's no Heath Robinson potches on this. So the lighting board has arrived, and what I'm going to do is just quickly walk through the installation of the lighting board. Should be really simple. I don't think it'll even involve any soldering, or maybe a tiny bit of soldering. And then what I'm then going to do is, once I'm happy that that's all working, I'll remove the fan assembly. I'll not linger on that because I've already done a video on removing the fan assembly. But what I really want to do is fit a DCC sound into this. Now, I got a Class 50 LokSound V4 at a discounted rate. I think eBay were doing a special discount rate, so even just to buy a blank LokSound V4 decoder for the price I could get it for was great. So what we'll then do later on in the video is look at putting the speakers into the chassis and getting the LokSound all set up. What I think I'll do with this one, because we've got quite a lot of room to play with, but at both ends, particularly once we remove the fan assembly, is look at what different types of speaker that I might be able to get in. Now, I've got a range. I've got sort of mega bass speakers, I've got bass reflex speakers, I've got a few different types. So I'll see what I can fit in, and hopefully be able to improve upon the normal kind of installation and get some really good sound out of this one. Okay, so as I mentioned, these lighting boards are available still from Peter's Spares. The code that's on here is X9252. Just pop that up there in case it focuses in for you there. Now, I'm pretty sure that's the Hornby code, but you can get the Hornby service sheet off their website and it tells you which one you need anyway, and just pop it into Google and it'll pop up. I think Peter's Spares was the cheapest at the time, but they're not the only outlet. So we only need one of these, and actually these boards come with the wiring loom as well. So I think what I'll probably just do is to remove the wires because I don't think we'll really need those, and use the existing wires that are in place at this end. I might need to trim the board just very slightly so that I don't need to feed the wires through, but we'll have a look at that and see how we get on. So I've removed one of the wires here from the replacement board, and it's really very easy to do. They just pull out pretty simply, and then there's a wee hole here through the PCB, and all you need to do is just feed the wires out and set these aside for another day, because actually these plugs you see on quite a number, particularly Hornby ones, so you never know when you might use them again, so I'll set them aside for some future project. So what we're left with then is the lighting board minus the wires, and we need to substitute it for this one. Now I've popped a wee purple X on this because in the past, learning from my own mistakes, I've taken off the defective part and then forgotten which is which and stuck it back on again. So I've put a wee purple cross on there. Now I was hoping, and I may even have mentioned it, I can't quite remember, that I was just going to do a straight switch, but now that I've been taking out these wee plugs here, I've actually noticed that the two wires that are feeding this left hand side here are actually pretty badly shredded. So I think what I'm going to have to do is to change over this wire here. Now that's okay because we've set these aside for future use, and that future use is actually right now. So I think what I'll do is I'll strip all these back, but I'll do it one at a time so that I remember which way around the connections go and make it really simple. Now sometimes you might need to get your soldering iron out, but this is the kind of push fit in the plastic connector of the top version, so we'll not need to get the soldering out for this. So what I'll do is I'll take this section off here and then replace one side, and then I'll do the same for the other. So first of all, I'm just going to take away this old decoder. We don't need this. Well, we don't need this at all now because I'm going to put in a LokSound V4. This is a LokPilot 3.5 actually, which is still quite a good chip, but not one we use for this anymore. Right, so I've tracked these wires back, and unfortunately, and this is a wee bugbear of mine actually that I have with quite a lot of these manufacturers, they often don't put on the terminal descriptions on here. So if you had a second hand from eBay loco and someone had been fiddling about with it and it didn't work, you would actually struggle to know exactly where everything went without seeing a photo of the original, because the service sheets don't show them either. But this time round we're lucky that it's not been fiddled with. So anyway, we just take away the plastic caps like this, and that reveals underneath the wire. So on this particular one, for the left hand, if you're looking at it from the back side, we've got the positive, well actually we've got the red wire that goes to this one, and we've got the black wire that goes to this one. But because the way Hornby sometimes do their wiring, the colours don't always relate to positive and negative or ground, so it's just one thing to watch out for. But anyway, it's red wire to this side and it's black wire to this side. So what I'll do is take one off at a time, I think, and then we can feed things through in due course. So I've disconnected the wires here, and what I'm going to do just before I horse on and connect in the new ones is to feed the new ones through the PCB. Now it's probably not going to show here, I'll put my finger behind just in case, but there's a tiny wee slit here, and I think that's really a strain relief for the wires. So if we feed these new wires through from the front and then to the back, and then we can route them to where they need to go. So that's that in there. In fact, we may as well, while we're at it, just plug them in as well. So that's one. And we will want to route it through this section here as well. So we can take that wee dot off. That wee plastic part there is just glued on, so we can glue a replacement back on again. that back through, and it was red and black, so we'll do the black first, which is inside. There we have it. That's the black, and we'll just pop the wee cap on just to keep that in place, don't lose it. And then we'll do exactly the same for the red. So that's the red and black on, so we're going to move to the other side now of the defective one. Now, having a look at this, this cable, or these wires rather, on this side are all absolutely fine. So I think what I'll probably do is leave this wiring in place, just cut it out of the PCB, and then fit the wiring through the new PCB. And in order to do that, we'll probably have to pop the pins out of the plug. Well, we won't probably, we'll have to, otherwise it's like getting an elephant through the eye of a needle. So first of all, we're just going to snip the side of the PCB here, just really carefully, making sure we don't snip the wires while we're at it. And we'll probably just do the top there, because we don't need this PCB anymore. So it can go. So there we are, that's the binned PCB, and I don't think I'll hang on to that. No, we'll just bin that. Okay, so now on to this one. So what we need to do here is to just very carefully pop open the wee plastic catch, and then hopefully the pins will pop out. So I've just got a very fine flat bladed screwdriver here, and I'll just ease that underneath. There we go, just about. Quite fiddly, these ones. There we go, and then out comes the pin like that, and we'll do that to the second one as well. So we've got these two wires off now, so there's the wee hole at the bottom of the PCB, and we'll just feed them through. Now we'll probably need to do one at a time just to get them through that. I might need to pinch the end just down very slightly. There we go. There's one. Fiddly stuff this. It might have been just as quick to reroute the wires, to be honest with you. I think if I was doing this again, I would just do that. So, and then number 2 in now as well. There we go. That's it routed through. So now we've got it routed through, we just need to push this plug back on. If you take a note of which way round you need to put it, then that will probably help. And in particular, we need to take a note of which way around the actual cables themselves go, so they colour match. So the way they go back on is with the two wee tabs pointing upwards. It's red on the right hand side, and it is black on the left hand side, like that. And they just push home into that, slot and click into place, just like that. So I have rerouted all the wires back through, and I've pushed it all into place. The lighting boards, I noticed, are actually quite wobbly in this. I think what I'll probably do is just pop a wee dab of glue on either side, maybe just a wee bit of CA glue or Superglue, avoiding getting any of the mechanism, but just to hold those where they need to go. There's also a little bit of, it actually looks like sellotape, but it looks factory installed underneath the lighting board to make sure that it doesn't short out against the metal chassis. Now I would suggest that you double check to make sure that's still in good shape when you pop it back on, and if it's not, just stick in a little bit of Kapton tape instead of the sellotape, just to do the same thing to protect for any shorts. Right, anyway, now that I've checked that this works, I popped it on the rolling road, the lighting board is working fine, the directional lights are working fine. We'll turn our attention to the fan assembly. Now, I'll not go through every step of this because I've already done it in another video, but really, if you're not going to pop it back on, the best thing to do is just to cut the actual belt with a pair of side cutters. I generally hold it on one side with a pair of tweezers, side cutters on the other, and then unscrew everything, and then you'll be left with a nice void here, and we can move on to the next step. So I'll do that off camera, and I'll come back when we've got all of this area cleared out. Right, so that's the fan assembly removed here, and as you see there's really pretty big space now that is left behind. One thing that I didn't mention before was that the wee plastic tab that I removed here to reroute the wires, if all you were doing was replacing the lighting board, you could glue that back on or BlackTak it down or just pop some BlackTak in instead. But I think I'll probably remove the other one just to give a better bed here for the second speaker. So I've left that one off, and this one will be coming off in due course. But the same on this side over here. I think what I'm going to do is to remove these two black plastic strips or panels just to leave a flatter area here so that we can house a speaker in. But I'll do that in a minute once I've worked out which speakers that I'm going to fit into this space. So I have got my little box of speakers here, of which I've got quite a variety, just to see which ones would fit in. So I have one here which is a bass reflex speaker. I think it's an 8 ohm, but I'll check that in a minute. I've got a mega bass speaker, which again is 8 ohm. I've never used these before actually, but they do seem to have quite good sound. I've got some large 8 ohm speakers. Now I've used these in a Junction Class 33 and 26 I think it was 26, yeah. I've got some sugar cubes, but they're way too small. I'm not going to bother with them. And let's pop this out the way. I've also got these little enclosed 8 ohm 2 watt speakers, which they're a little bit like the 20 by the 20 by what you call it 40 ones, but I've never used them actually. I don't know what they're like, so I think I'll maybe give one of these a bit of a whirl and see how we get on with that. But I have anyway measured these, and unfortunately, while these gave a great sound, they're not going to fit. So we can pop these to the side. This one, I've seen these Megabass speakers fitted in at least one 50, Class 50 online, but they didn't come with this enclosure, and I haven't been able to find them without the enclosure. Maybe they're about. If anyone knows, do let me know. But looking at this, I don't think I'm going to separate this enclosure from the speaker without doing some damage. So I think I'll probably leave this. What I had thought was I could probably, if I could get the enclosure off, print a 3D enclosure, a 3D printed enclosure rather, that would fit within that space, because it doesn't quite fit on its own. But I think I'm probably going to have to park that and come back to it another day or in another model. So we'll set that to one side. So what that leaves me with then is the bass reflex speaker and this little 8 ohm speaker. So I think I'll probably try and parallel these up. They're both 8 ohm, which is excellent, because that means I'll end up getting 4 ohms, which is fine for a LokSound 4, which is what I've got. So this one here will fit in, we just need to trim it down, and again this one here will fit in, we just need to trim it down. So I think that's what I'll do. So I'll prepare these speakers, I'll trim them down and get them ready to go, and then we'll move on to the installation of the speakers as the next stage. Okay, sorry, just very quickly before I go on to the next stage, I was going to test the speaker to make sure that it was 8 ohms. So the easiest way to do that is to get yourself a multimeter. Any reasonable one that's fairly accurate is fine. Set it to ohms. I'll just undo this and pop the wee stand out so we can see. There we go. And just measure the resistance across the speaker. Now you're not actually measuring resistance, you're measuring impedance with a speaker. And even if it's an 8 ohm speaker, you're very unlikely to get absolutely 8 ohms. Because that isn't really how the impedance works in a speaker. But what you're looking for is something in the region of 8 ohms. So what we've got there is 7.6, so that's near enough. If it was a 4 ohm and not an 8 ohm speaker, you'd be looking at getting something that was just shy of 4 ohms. So that is fine, that's an 8 ohm speaker, and we can crack on. Okay, so we've popped the chassis to one side, and I've got my soldering equipment out, my little soldering pad and soldering iron just off camera here. So we've got the speakers ready, and we just need to get the LokSound decoder. So As I mentioned at the head of the video, it's a LokSound V4 that I've gone for. I honestly can't remember who the sound file is. I don't think it's the world's best, but it's perfectly alright, particularly as I probably won't run this loco lots. But I got it in a sale, and I think it was a brand new LokSound V4 for something like 70 quid or something, so even the LokSound on its own was a good deal for that. But I'm not going to use the speaker that came with it in any case, so what I'm going to do is just trim off the speaker wires, or I might desolder them actually, because may as well, we're going to be in here anyway, and set that aside for possible future use. And then I'm going to hook up these speakers, and then we'll give it a wee test just before we give it a run in the loco, just to make sure we're happy with everything. So I'm just going to desolder the wires here. Now I popped on a tiny wee bit of flux just to make it flow a wee bit more easily, but we'll just dab it on there. There's one off, and there's two off. And by doing that, it just maximises the amount of wire we've got here, because we're going to need to do a wee bit of jiggery pokery with different wires coming in from different speakers to get everything set up. So learning from previous mistakes where I've soldered things with not enough wire or too much or whatever, I'm just going to quickly work out roughly where I think I'll probably put all the speakers. Now I am going to test these, but I think just while I'm soldering, I may as well solder things to the right length, just so assuming it works fine, then we're good to go. So I think we'll pop this one in this side here. I'm going to glue back in that wee plastic tab, and probably also put another bit of Plasticard across there, just to support that speaker. On this side, I don't need to put in any Plasticard, but I do need to just nip off the top of these little pips here, which were used to align the fan assembly, just to get it down another couple of millimeters so it will sit comfortably in there. Once the speaker plug is in there, then I think this will sit quite comfortably just on top, with plenty room as well just above, probably. So we'll go for that anyway. And fingers crossed we'll get all that fitting in. Right, so having had a wee fiddle about with the chassis itself, I think this kind of arrangement with the chip here and all these soldered together at one sort of star point is probably the easiest way to do it. I may yet fix this underneath the PCB with some Kapton tape. I think it might be a bit of a push to get it on top, but once I've got all this soldered together, we'll see how we get on with that. So what I've done here is I've stripped back the ends of these two speaker cables here. I've cut this one back to length. This one also had a hole on the bottom, which I have covered up with Plasticard, just to help, well, hopefully help to get a bit of better bass out of it. And I'm just going to strip these two wires back. Now, stripping wee wire is pretty fiddly, but one of the best investments I've ever got was this set of wire strippers, the PA14. They're made in Japan, but they go down to 0.25 of a millimeter, which is absolutely excellent for these tiny little wires that come on decoders. So it saves you using your teeth and getting things stuck in your teeth. So there's one off there. And we'll go for the second one here. And there's the second one off there too. So now we've got everything stripped back, what I'm going to do is just twist everything together. Now it doesn't matter which of these brown wires from the decoder you twist things onto, but because we're wiring these in parallel, what we need to do is red to red and black to black, which is really important that we get it that way. So the red ones come together and the black ones come together. So I'm going to twist all these pairs together and we'll come back to applying a little solder shortly. So I've twisted these together. The one thing I should mention is I've already popped some heat shrink onto the wire here. That's a schoolboy error I have made many times, is to forget to put the heat shrink on. So do that before you twist anything or solder anything. But anyway, we'll just daub on some liquid flux here just to help that joint solder together nicely. I'm doing one at a time just because I find that if you don't, then when you start moving the wires for the next one, there's a tendency for things just to flop about out of place. So again, some very fine solder here, just wet the tip, and we go. Excellent, good job. Okay, so we've got the speakers wired up, we've popped some heat shrink over the top of them. As I always do, I like to leave on the extra auxiliary wires just in case you ever need them, but I wrap it up in Kapton tape. So we've got everything fitted up here into the LokSound tester, which I did a wee video on just the other day with my modification. So on this one we want to switch off the onboard speaker and just use these two speakers here. So we'll just give it a quick whiz now and see how we get on with the sound and see what it sounds like. Okay, so it's not sounding too bad. It's definitely a lot more bass, a lot more growl than I normally get. I think I would probably ideally have liked to try it with the mega bass, but it's not going to work because they're stuck in their enclosure. But I think this is quite a good compromise. Yep, so I think I'll be happy enough to stick with that. I do find sometimes that when you put the enclosure back on, you get a bit more bass as well. That containment can really help to bring out the lower frequencies. So not happy with that. So what we'll do now is we'll move this into the chassis, and that'll be the next part of the video. So I mentioned a little bit earlier on about the little pips that were standing up here left over from where the fan assembly was. Now there's various ways you can take them off, but I just used a pair of old snips, ones that you don't mind maybe chewing the mouth up a wee bit, put them as flush as I could and nipped them off. Now the good thing about doing it that way is it really cuts down on the amount of iron filings that could get in and about the worm gear or the motor assembly, which is obviously something you want to avoid. So I've nipped these down anyway. They're really nice and flush now. I'll give them just a very, very light filing, but nothing too much, and making sure to cover up and mask off the motor itself. Now once I've done that, what I'll also do is I'll remove the little plastic shims. Now I've glued the shim back on this side because for the small speaker it sits really neatly in there, and they will, with a little bit of Plasticard, they will help to keep the speaker in the right place. On this side the little shims lift the speaker just a tiny wee bit too high, but because of the way the chassis is formed here, we don't actually need any Plasticard. The rigidity of the speaker casing itself will be fine. So I'll remove these two and I'll file these down, and I'll be back in just a minute. So what I've done is I've put a load of BlackTak down along the top here and down here, which will hold in the bass reflex speaker. On this side here, as I mentioned, I've glued back on that wee shim. And what I've also done is I have glued together two little thin bits of Plasticard, just to roughly the same depth as the spacer here. And then I've glued that onto the back of this speaker. Now the idea will be that that'll hold it there. By gluing it to the speaker, it'll cut down on any potential for vibration, and we'll be able to get that all sitting there snug, and this bit here will be held snug as well by the BlackTak. Okay, so in true kind of blooper style, I was going to position the LokSound underneath the PCB, but actually it was more cramped than I thought it was going to be. But then when I started having a better look at it, I realised that if I was careful about how I positioned it around the various components, that I could just squeeze it in here. So I put in plenty of Kapton tape to insulate everything, so there's not going to be any shorts on anything at all. Because I repositioned it, I've got a wee bit more wire here than I would have wanted, but there's just enough room to snake it all in. Everything is secure now. I've put it on the rolling road and everything works. The lights work, so the repair is from right at the beginning of the video is still working. So that all remains to be done now is to get the chassis and body back together and give it a quick shot on the rolling road just to make sure everything's fine, and then it's job done. Okay, so we've got the body and the chassis back together, we've got the detail at either end fitted back together, so let's just give it a quick test on the rolling road just to make sure everything's working as expected. So let's look at the lights. We've got forward and we've got the tail lights, And there we've got the forward lights and the tail lights. There we go, excellent. So that's the lights working fine. Let's give the sound a whiz. Excellent, so there we have it, another wee electronics DCC sound tutorial. We've managed to fix the lights, and we've installed the LokSound V4 with slightly improved speakers from the default speakers. It's sounding pretty good. I might update the actual sound project to Legomanbiffo or somebody else's in due course, but it'll do for now. So a cheap buy off a popular auction site has come really pretty good with just a little bit of fixing, a few replacement parts, but it just goes to show you don't have to spend an absolute fortune to get a lovely locomotive. Anyway, so thank you very much for watching this. I hope you made it to the end with me. If you like what you've seen in this, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to make any comments or suggestions or ask any questions, then feel free to leave a comment below. But all that's left anyway for me to say is thanks very much for watching, and see you again soon. Cheerio for now. Bye bye.